On February 14, 2018, Andrew Pollack and his family suffered an unthinkable tragedy. Meadow Pollack was killed by the high school shooter in Parkland, Florida. Pollack set out on a journey to understand how this could have happened, which culminated in his book, Why Meadow Died, which he co-wrote with Max Eden. So, what policies in Broward County were responsible for Meadow's death? What reforms has Andrew championed to prevent future mass shootings? What can parents do to keep their children safe? And what is the role of mainstream media in all of this? This is American Thought Leaders, and I am Jekielek. Today we sit down with school safety advocate Andrew Pollack, co-author of Why Meadow Died, the people and policies that created the Parkland shooter and endanger America's students. We discuss how policies originally put in place to end the school-to-prison pipeline have prevented teachers from disciplining violent and aggressive students. In Parkland, Andrew believes this created, quote, the most avoidable shooting ever. We also look at how, in Andrew's eyes, the gun control debate has shifted attention away from the broken policies present in schools across the nation. Andy Pollack, excellent to have you on American Thought Leaders.
Oh, thank you for having me today.
So Andy, you were the author of Why Meadow Died. Meadow, of course, refers to your daughter, talking about the policies and the practices that basically led to the Parkland shooter. Tell me a little bit, what do you hope this book can achieve?
Oh, that's pretty cut and dry. I really, when I first got into this, I was hoping that I could be the last parent to ever have something like this happen to them, because it's pretty bad, like to lose a child in a school shooting. I wanted to be an advocate, and I'm saying, that's it, we're gonna fix it, there's gonna be no more school shootings. And then another shooting happened in Santa Fe, and then there was one in Charlotte and Colorado, and I saw I couldn't achieve that goal. So I changed my philosophy over the last few months to say, I want to be the last parent that could say, I didn't know what was going on in the school. Okay, so now I look at it that parents have no excuse now to not know what's going on in the schools. And that's why I also call this book like a guide, like a manual for parents and grandparents to read it. And you have to see what really happened to me and my family and my daughter to get it. And then it's not only in Broward, these policies, they're throughout the country. And I would hope that parents would inhale this and say, you know what, I can't put my daughter or grandchild in an environment like I did. Like, I have the guilt now of not knowing. Parents, they don't have that excuse anymore. And that is my big thing with this book and doing these videos with you. Parents don't have an excuse now to say they didn't know.
So, you say, what's happening in the school system? And I know that's a very broad question, but can you give me a sense, what do you mean when you say what's happening? What is it that parents need to know?
Well, there's multiple things, okay? Mm-hmm. There's security, which is a smaller part to me. People think I'm like, I'm so I want security, I want extra officers. I do want those things, but that's only a layer of the security. More important, what parents, to me, is these policies that have spread throughout the country of leniency, of not holding kids accountable, of giving them multiple chances per school year at misdemeanors, disruption, without any consequence. And it really, even teachers, you put them in that situation with disruptive kids, 10 minutes on average a class, they're handling a disruptive kid, while your kid, the honest roll student, just wants to learn. So that's a big thing. The discipline policies, that's been lax now. You see it all over the country. Teachers are getting assaulted. And another big part of it is they mainstream kids that they could be labeled like a sociopath, a psychopath, mentally sick, like this one that killed my daughter, and they'll label him special needs. When they do that, it makes this kid untouchable. So they mainstream him into a school, and we're not talking like someone with dyslexia, a learning disability, right, not disruptive. We all want to help those kids. But they'll take a disruptive kid who's violent and label him special needs, and they'll give that person more rights than any other child in the school. And those policies are in public schools right now, and parents need to know about it because they're ultimately responsible. You're ultimately responsible where you put your child, and now it's on the parents. Politicians can only do so much.
So it sounds to me like you're saying it's not only a disservice to the students that are going to be honor roll students to be placed this way, but it's a disservice to the students that have these problems like sociopathy or just, incredibly disruptive at a different level.
It's horrible because I see it as, I could tell you personally, when I was 17, I got into trouble, right?
Okay.
And my parents made me deal with it in a harsh way, and it hurt, right? And I've never ever gotten in trouble again since that time. And I think about it because it brings me back to when I was a kid and I had to deal with a consequence.
Right.
When kids don't have consequence, you never know what's going to happen when they get older. So to me, it's like they do it wrong. When some kids are juveniles and they're acting out, they need to be held accountable. So you lead the pathway to what's righteous. When kids have no accountability, you set them up for failure. So, and these policies are these liberal policies that were brought on by Democrats, and I don't agree with it. I want to help kids when they're younger and teach them right from wrong. They do it opposite. They think that if you coddle these kids and don't teach them right from wrong with consequences, you think you're going to set them up for success. I don't agree with that way.
So I want to get you to talk a little bit about more of the specific policies that you
Sure.
explored and kind of discovered, it seems, through the book as I was following
Well,
it.
I could tell you, so after the shooting, and let's, my daughter was murdered here at the school. So my thing really, the book is second for me. Getting this message out is very important to me. And I want everyone to know I'm living with this guilt of my daughter going into school. So after this happened, I started getting calls from students, from teachers, saying how evil this kid was, how many times he was in the office, how many times they told the principals that this kid was violent. He wanted to beat me up. He was going to rape me. He was going to kill me. All these things started coming out. Everywhere in the media was gun control, gun control, gun control. Even before my daughter I buried her.
I remember there was even some Politico article or something like this that explicitly said that disciplinary issues weren't an issue. Or
Yeah, he called it the superintendent, Robert Runcie, who comes from Chicago, he worked for Arnie Duncan, the Department of Education Secretary under Obama. He called it, I'll never forget, because my wife nothing ever gets her angry. My wife went to the school board meeting where they asked the superintendent about these policies, and he said it's fake news. That had nothing to do with it. And then a month later, it comes out in another meeting, he says he was never in the Promise program while in high school. And when he said, a Harvard grad said to us, while in high school, we knew he was covering up that it must have been, he went into this program in junior high school.
Quickly let us know, what is the Promise program?
The Promise program is the name of this diversionary program, restorative justice, they call it. That's what they called it in Broward, the Promise program, which is, they call it, there's different names for it in every school. There's a different name for it, but in the big picture of it, it's restorative justice. It's where they're not holding kids accountable to end the school to prison pipeline. But in actuality, it creates it because you never teach a kid a lesson. There's no consequence. So now when they're 18 and out in the real world and they've never been disciplined, they commit a crime and now it's a felony on their record forever.
According to this philosophy, I mean, this is presumably what you want other parents to know, that this is happening. Why would a student not be disciplined even though they're doing things as egregious as you've been describing?
For instance, when my daughter went to the school, they were allowing kids 4 misdemeanors per school year, okay, with no consequence, never meeting the sheriff, police, judicial system, nothing, for the year. And then every year it resets with another 4. And even to this day, they're allowed to sell drugs in school, okay? Say they have, I don't know the total amount of say it's an ounce, I don't know what it is, to carry carry weed, marijuana. If they had 20 bags of weed and it weighed less than an ounce and they had it to distribute, 20 bags. They would get referred to this Promise program and not have to deal with law enforcement. So parents, they have to wake up, and that's why it's so important to me. They could commit, they could rob an iPhone. If you read now a new word, we didn't have it. You didn't have this word when you were growing up. Bullying.
Okay.
Where did that come from? These kids, it's out of control. There's no consequences.
I see.
And that's why when parents, my kid's getting bullied, I get emails all the time. It's these policies, these leniency policies that are actually doing damage to mostly public schools. And I met with the Secretary of Education. They see it, but their hands are tied. Like I told you, politicians can only do so much.
So the philosophy basically is that if you provide leniency, for some reason that will create a better outcome for the student.
Well, it really started with they thought it was racial discrimination. That's where it comes into play. Mm-hmm. That more African Americans and Hispanics were getting suspended and expelled more than Caucasians. So rather than look at what the issues are internally and try and make a difference to help kids and families, they just said, let's stop arresting kids. And then they create this whole, so say you're the teacher, right? You have a problem kid in your school, in your class. You write up something, this kid's being disruptive, he's hit this kid, he's bullying the kid, hit him. So the teacher would write something, send them down to the principal, and then the principal would send the kid back within a day and say, listen, you have to deal with it. And meanwhile, the teacher did a bunch of paperwork trying to hold this kid accountable. But at the end of the day, the teacher just stops doing it because it doesn't get anywhere. This kid doesn't get any consequence.
I see.
And it affects her teaching lessons and all the other kids in the classroom, and it doesn't show them right from wrong. So that's where it started. Stop the school to prison pipeline, racial discrimination. And then if you question it, what's the first thing the left is going to say to you?
I can imagine.
You're a racist.
Right.
That's what they're going to say. And it happened in Broward. The other, most of Broward's Democrats, and so the families went to a school board meeting. I didn't go. And they wanted accountability on the superintendent. They looked at these policies and they said, this isn't right. This culture of leniency you created in Broward, we want accountability. What happens? A bunch of people got bussed in, for the superintendent, in support of the superintendent, and they called these families racists.
Wow.
And it's all on record,
Right.
It was on a school board meeting, and I felt horrible for them, And what bothered me also was, here's Democrat parents, right, that went and did this, and they got called out by these other, but I call them unethical bureaucrats in Broward. And they got called out, and no Democrats came to help them, But when they were spewing their gun control, these families, Eric Swalwell came out on gun control. Nancy Pelosi came to Parkland for gun control, but not when these families wanted accountability from the superintendent. No one was anywhere to be seen when it came to those policies and those families wanting accountability and getting called racist. No one came out to help them.
So let me switch gears a tiny bit here. You connected along the way in this journey, the terrible journey that you've been forced to take. You connected with Max Eden, who's obviously been, writing and thinking about education, about school choice, all sorts of this whole realm. I wanted to find out, he writes whole chapters in the book.
Correct.
And so together you've been doing a lot of thinking about policy. Can you tell me a little bit about how you connected and you figured out that this is what you should do?
It's really been, we developed a good relationship, and we're very happy how we're getting the message out, because we see we're making a difference, and it's going to save lives. And parents are going to really see what happened and put their kids in the right environment. So Max, getting to your question, Max came down to Florida when he heard Superintendent Runcie say, never in high school. When he made the comment, he was never in the Promise program in high school. Max was like watching it and Max is an expert in education policy.
Right.
That's what he does. I'm just a father whose daughter got murdered. I don't know anything about this stuff. So I had a conversation with Max, and he says, I want to do a story on what's going on down here and come to get facts and and do a little investigation. I said, you know what, I have all these people reaching out to me. I don't know what to ask them. You know, I have kids, teachers, all reaching me on social media about this kid. I said, why don't you, I'm going to give you the list of people, and you start talking to these people. Because my daughter was murdered, and there's nothing anyone's going to do to prevent me from finding the facts and holding these people accountable for what happened. There's nothing that could stop me, nothing, okay? So Max started interviewing these people, and he's telling me, Andy, it's so bad what I'm hearing. You know, kids went forward to the principals, telling them that he was going to kill.
So he had told other kids.
Yeah, he was going to kill them. He skinned animals. He brought dead animals to school, bullets. And Max is writing all these things down. And it was just getting so much, and we were working so hard. I said, dude, he goes to me, I can't do it in one story, Andy. This has to be a book. So that's what we did. We got together, and we developed a good relationship. To this day, we're very close now with this book going on. I couldn't do it without him, and he couldn't have done it without me. And I respect him in his work ethics and what he knows about these policies. And I'll tell you something else about Max, why Max is so involved. Max's mom was a school teacher for over 30 years. And he saw what happened to his mom with these policies, and she retired. And he told that to me. It affected him, how his mother was coming home and she didn't want to go to work anymore, and what was going on with the discipline policies. And that's what pointed Max into being an expert in education policy.
Okay.
And that's what gives him and drives him now, is to expose these policies for what happened. You're the first guy I told this to, but that's what strives him to be what he does, because what he's seen happen to his mom, and now what happened to my daughter, and he knows it's all linked. And if it's not for us doing this book, the Democrats really would have got what they wanted, and that's blame it all on gun control.
It's really fascinating to learn about Max's motivations. I want to actually get back to the gun control question in a little bit, but tell me a little bit about someone like Max's mom. Presumably there's many teachers like this in a giant school system like Broward has.
Correct.
That maybe don't agree with the policies or have questions about them, but what prevents them from speaking about this or actually trying to affect some kind of change? You've written about this in the book.
That's a good question, and I dealt with it firsthand. So I had the school board race in Broward, and I ended up having to battle with the Broward Teachers Union.
So tell me a little bit about the school board race, just so our audience understands, and then we'll jump in.
A few months after my daughter was murdered, there was going to be a school board race. So my daughter was murdered in February.
Yes.
The election was already now in August for the primary. We had to win the primary. So there was 2 parents that lost children running, and then I put up a candidate too to run, because there was 9, so we needed 5 school board votes to be able to make a difference in Broward and make the changes that we knew Broward needed to get rid of these policies, to get rid of this incompetent superintendent, Robert Runcie, and that was the goal, and just make it safe for the kids. So we put together an army of volunteers all over the country. They came to help me, from California, from New York, from Wisconsin. Families were coming to help me, knock doors. We had early voting, everything covered. My wife worked. We worked day and night. We put all our souls into it. But teachers weren't out there helping us. We were fighting the teachers union. I wasn't too happy with the Broward teachers, okay? But there's only maybe 50-something% belong to the union, maybe 40-something% don't belong to the union. But they weren't out there. They weren't out there fighting with us to make a change for them. Higher pay we wanted to give them. We wanted to get rid of the policies that created this unsafe environment. And they were nowhere to be seen, the teachers. So I don't have an answer for it. I don't know why they're silent. They're a big crowd. They're leaving the profession right now at an all-time high. What person would want to work in an environment where you can't suspend disruptive kids or expel them. And they're not highly paid, and they're leaving the industry. But they don't do anything about it, so I really can't sympathize with them. And I dealt with it firsthand, so I don't sympathize with teachers if they don't speak up or they don't do anything. I tried, and they were nowhere to be seen in Broward, so I don't have any sympathy for them.
I understood this from the book, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's almost like the policies are kind of set up in such a way, actually you alluded to this a little bit earlier, policies are set up in such a way that it kind of disincentivizes teachers from actually trying to
they give
hold
them
kids accountable.
A lot of paperwork, okay, with it, and they don't see any results. I think 2000, they just had the survey, so which is kind of remarkable because we tried to help these teachers, and now they had a survey. 2,000 teachers were surveyed. If they got assaulted, how many would the child get arrested? And I think 3 teachers out of 2,000 came back and said that the student would be arrested. That's it.
Out of 2,000 assaults?
Out of 2,000, no, 2,000 teachers were asked the survey. If you were assaulted, what, they came back, only 3 of the teachers out of the 2,000 said that the child would be arrested.
I see.
And they're getting beat up. I don't have you could get the stats.
Sure.
They just took the survey.
We'll take a look at that.
Yeah, there's a survey that was just out for the Broward teachers, and it's pretty remarkable how they're getting assaulted and how there's no discipline. But I really have no sympathy for them. It sounds weird, but it sounds bad, but I don't, because they weren't there to help. They weren't there to make a change. So how could I? So stay where you're at. You didn't step up. You didn't help us in the school board race. It would have been a difference. We would have changed policy when we were in Broward, but only maybe 4 teachers came and helped us.
So you weren't able to do something in the school board elections, but it does seem like you actually affected some policy, and you actually were pretty instrumental in passing the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School Public Safety Act.
Correct. 3 weeks after my daughter was murdered, myself and Ryan Petty, who lost his daughter Elena, we met in Tallahassee with the governor, and we helped. Really, if it wasn't for us, that bill never would have got passed, because we actually sat in an office, Ryan and myself, and they brought in senators and House reps for the state, and we spoke to them about the bill and what it meant to us. And at the end of the day, we ended up getting a bill passed, a bipartisan bill. It was one of the most difficult things I've done, dealing with it's the first time I had to deal with politicians in my life.
Okay.
But we got it done. Me and Brian, it meant so much to us, because for me, to get that bill passed in Florida, it meant that my daughter's life didn't go in vain. We got a bill passed that's gonna make kids safer, and I wanted other states to look at Florida as an example at what we got done in Florida and follow. And if we couldn't get that passed with 17 people getting murdered, I thought it was like we were doomed as society. Nothing could ever get done, because we couldn't even do it in Florida when 17 people lost their lives. But we ended up getting the bill passed, and it meant a lot to me and Ryan, and we're saving a lot of lives, and Ryan and myself, we won't even know it, because it's that much of a deterrent, what we've gotten done, where you never know how many lives you save, because it's a deterrent, the bill, from someone going in and shooting up a school. So
tell me, to you, what do you think the most important provisions of this new bill are for the deterrence and for school safety?
Okay, what I saw with my daughter's school, they had no policy in place also for their Code Red drill. It was a failure. It was such a multitude of failures with the Code Red drills. Another big thing, there was one armed guard at the school with my daughter and failed miserably.
Right.
He went with between 9 feet. He got 9 feet to the school door to go in. They drove him there, told him the shooter was in there, and he retreated back and he hid behind a wall. But even by the time he got there, everyone was dead on the first floor. My daughter was on the 3rd floor. She was counting on everybody who put their kid in that school, relied on this guy to go and save their kids. And this one deputy piece of garbage hid behind a wall and let my daughter get murdered on the 3rd floor, where she was shot 9 times. So for me, it's very important to have, we increased the amount of guards at a school from, now it's one per 1,000 students and workers.
Okay.
Okay, per school, it's the law. We also enacted, part of the bill was named after a coach that ran into the building unarmed. His name was Aaron Feist.
Right.
So I got that named after him. With the family, they okayed it, and we made that part of the bill. It was called the Aaron Feist Guardian Program. So that meant a lot to me, and I worked very hard with a sheriff in Polk County who's a good friend of mine, Grady Judd, wrote the curriculum for it. And it trains personnel at the school to be able to carry a firearm, okay? Because think about it, when something happens right then and there, if you call first responders, it's minutes away, and 20 kids, you could just keep shooting. So really for me, when seconds count, you need someone right there who's qualified. So a lot of counties in Florida are going through, putting their educators through the Guardian program, which the media would like you to make you think it's like a weekend course where the teacher could go and then on a Friday and bring the firearm into school on a Monday. But it's the opposite of that. It's an intense course. It's got about a 50% failure rate.
Wow.
50%. They're held to a higher accuracy in shooting because they're in close range. So in order to pass, they're held to a higher accuracy than a deputy that's out on the street.
Okay.
So they don't just give these people a free pass. And they really do a lot of intense training. So a lot of counties are, and it's a voluntary program. The media doesn't like to say that either. They think we're going to make grandma in the home ec class go and carry a gun. It's the total, it's people that maybe they were in the military, maybe they're comfortable with the firearm. Maybe they just want to learn to be able to protect themselves and their students. But it's a big dedication for a teacher to volunteer and go through that class. And I feel that, there's schools that say now, there's signs up. We're going to protect our kids with everything. We're going to shoot back. And they have signs like that in Texas. And in Florida, I think that would be enough of a deterrent for some evil, sick person never to go to that school. So that's one thing. And then mental health, there's more money for mental health. There's money in that bill for hardening of the schools, doors and locks. And another big thing in the bill is now they're forcing the schools to communicate with the Sheriff's Department and DCF. So that's a big thing for me. And they don't want to do that. The school district wants to, a lot of them, not all, a lot of them want to comply, but there are counties like Broward that don't want to comply still in working with law enforcement.
This would be just kind of reporting these misdemeanors.
Yeah, or something happens, or they notify the police department on a computer. They're supposed to be interlinked.
That doesn't always happen.
It doesn't happen. They don't. Like I said, you could sell drugs still in Broward County schools and not get arrested. But you go and sell drugs at the mall and it happens, you'll get arrested. So it's a safe zone for kids, even for fights. They could do an assault at a school and nothing will happen. But the same kid, if you had that fight and assaulted a kid at the mall down the street, he could get arrested. So kids now, where do they go if they're going to commit a crime? They're going to do it at a school. It's sick, I know what you're saying, but it's the truth. You read the book, and that's why it's so important to me. I'd like to get into politicians with you, why they could only do so much. And that's why this book is so important, so parents could really see the story and know what most, the big news stations, they don't want them to know this. But I thank you for getting my message out, and parents are going to know, and they are getting it.
So tell me a little bit about, if you're a parent today in, I don't know where, in America.
Anywhere in America. They have these policies. They're all over.
What is it that you should be thinking about? What is it in your mind that you should be thinking about, asking about? I can see a big part of your message is parents don't just leave it up to the school, right?
Or politicians.
You got to get involved.
Yeah, exactly.
What are you recommending parents do to try to address these?
Well, I get a lot of people messaging me about this, like what did the president do? What did Governor Ron, they're leaving it up to politicians. But I can honestly tell you that the president, Ron DeSantis, Rick Scott, Marco Rubio, they could only do so much. okay, at a federal level, at a state level. So it was really like they did everything they could for me, these people that I'm friendly with now. I developed relationships with them.
Right.
They passed bills, they did a grand jury, they removed the sheriff, they signed an executive order. They formed the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Safety Commission,
Right.
Governor Scott. So they did everything they could, but then you get a school district like Broward that's not transparent, okay? So when they tell me, what could we do? I did everything. I tried to fix Broward, okay? But some places are just not fixable. So the first thing where parents should do is read the book, Why Meadow Died, and they'll see what happened so they understand it. Then they could go to their school and go to a school board meeting, talk to the resource officer at the school, and talk to a teacher. You know, they're going to tell you the truth, not in public. You know, they're not going to get on this, they're not going to go speak out in a forum and tell you exactly what's
Right.
going on. But if you confide in them and you talk to them about these policies, about disruptive kids, do they feel safe, they're most likely going to tell you the truth. And listen to your child at the school. Hey, what's going on at the school? Is the teacher teaching the lessons? Any kids disruptive? You know, because like I said, the bullying, the assaults, all these things are going on, and we see it, but why it's going on is because of these lenient discipline policies.
Okay. And so let's say you've now had the conversation.
Yes.
Let's say you find out, oh, wow, I feel like we have a big problem, like you've just described
Correct.
in Broward. What do? You may feel
Well,
hopeless.
Well, you don't want to feel like I do, I could tell you, because I have the guilt of never knowing what went on at the school. So now you're a parent and you know, oh my God, these policies are at the school. This kid's being disruptive in my kid's class. So in Florida, there are options for families, okay? We have charter schools. So for instance now, Broward County enrollment is down 2,000 this fall season. Charter schools are up and private schools up. So parents have options, because at the end of the day, right, there's nothing worth your child not coming home. No, you can't put a dollar sign on it, no matter what it costs, I tell people. So you have options. You have charter schools, you have homeschool, you have private school, and then you can move to a district that you're comfortable with. And you have to do it, or else, I tell them, you're rolling the dice. Your kid might not get shot, but why put him in that kind of environment where he could get bullied? He's got to list it. The teacher's got to work with one student for 10 minutes while your student can't even get a good education. And it's happening.
So it almost sounds like, you know, you're advocating for kind of a capitalist solution here. If people actually choose alternate schooling.
In Florida, we have that.
Eventually,
we have choice.
Yeah.
And I know, because I was on the Ron DeSantis, I was on the campaign with that guy. I really knew Ron was going to do a good job as governor. When I met Ron, he said, Andy, we're going to hold people accountable. And that's when I got with Ron DeSantis. And Ron was for choice for
Right,
parents.
of course.
So what people don't know, Ron DeSantis got a huge African-American vote in Florida, because parents, it doesn't matter what color you are, you want your kid to go to a good school. So he got a lot of African-Americans that want their kids going to charter schools, and he got a big vote, and it pushed him over the top. That was one of the things that split, that made a difference for Ron, of charter schools, where the other governor was more Broward teachers type of union type of guy, a socialist Democrat. So they really got lucky, all the people of Florida, electing Ron.
Do you think that if enough people signal to a school board like Broward that we're actually choosing alternate options because we don't trust you, do you think that could make a change?
Broward's not a good example, because Broward is just such a cesspool of these unethical people that I don't think it's fixable. I couldn't do it, you know what I mean? I don't think it is. But other areas, I think parents can make a difference with the grassroots, where people are open-minded, and they could get together and make a change. And this is what it's about. And if you can't, you have to explore your options. Broward is pretty much hopeless in my eyes. I don't think you could fix Broward. You know, that sheriff that was removed, he's
Right.
running again.
Right,
So,
I read that.
Yeah, so you can't fix a county like that. But there are counties that are flippable, where you have board members, school board members, that want to do right by their children. And that you could go, like you said, another option is go to the school board meeting. Talk to the school board members and see how you feel. And just remember, you have to do it because your kid's life could depend on it.
And you know, this whole thing strikes me as actually a very much a bipartisan issue. And the thing I wanted to get back to the gun control thing, because it feels like a lot of this is being framed in what we call the legacy media or mainstream media as a gun control thing. This happened, obviously gun control is the answer. And then that of course sets it up very much as a highly partisan issue. Am I right in what I'm seeing? But these policies aren't, we're talking about policies that don't specifically talk about gun control, or at least you mentioned you're for it, but tell me a little bit about, is this being conflated somehow?
Well, I'm glad you asked me that question because I have the answer for you. When my daughter got murdered, I just said I want to make the schools safer. Like, what could I do? So I wanted more security. I wanted to look into these policies, and I just wanted to make the kids and the teachers safer, and that made me a Republican, because that's all I wanted. If I didn't use the gun word, Democrats, I can't figure it out. I want kids safe. I want to harden the schools. I want the teachers safe. I don't want disruptive kids in the school with my kid, and I want kids that commit crimes arrested in the school. Listen, I'm not for hurting kids. I went through a program. I said it when I was 17. I'm not ashamed of it. There are programs that work for these kids and point them in the right direction. That made me a Republican. I don't know. You tell me. It's kind of crazy, isn't it? I'm Republican because I just said all those things. I was never out there pushing politics. Now all of a sudden I'm pushing politics. I'm a solid conservative guy. I'm on conservative shows. And the media, the fake news channels and these other leftist channels, they don't want to hear the truth. They don't want to see the facts, what's in the book. So who are they hurting? They're hurting parents that don't want to know about these policies, that I have it in black and white from his records, from his teachers that are in there. It's nothing that I'm pushing. I'm never going to run for office. I have no intention of running for office. I just want kids safe, and if that makes me a Republican and a conservative, I'll own up to it. I don't mind being called that.
Well, I remember there was this whole issue when you were first, I think it was posting your daughter's photo. You were the photo was you had
I went on
election.
that was
Yeah.
February 14th, the
Right.
day my daughter was murdered. I went
Right.
on a picnic, and I just put a shirt on that day. Do I know my daughter's getting murdered that day? Does it matter what shirt I have on? I'm at the hospital looking for my daughter. My wife's out there going room for room looking for her. And they Democrats focus on my Trump shirt when I'm holding a picture practically crying looking for my daughter. Like I give a shit about my Trump shirt. And that's what they focused on. Not my daughter got shot 9 times trying to save a freshman on the 3rd floor. That's what they focus on. I want armed guards at the school so kids don't get shot. I want single point of entrance so kids are safe. And that's what they make me out to be, a Republican conservative. I'll own up to that any day of the week. I'm a happy Republican conservative.
Yeah, you were actually bizarrely attacked for that
all
photo.
over my Twitter, but I can handle it. You know, nothing they're going to throw at me bothers me, and there's nothing that they're going to throw at me that's going to stop me from exposing these garbage policies and for letting my daughter get murdered in that school. I'm not done in Broward. You know, one by one, I'm getting accountability for my daughter, and there's nothing that is going to stop me from getting that for my daughter. And the sheriff, I took him down. The deputy, he got arrested on felony charges. Supervisor of elections removed. I got a grand jury investigation into the school board. Ron DeSantis signed an executive order looking into the diversionary programs in Broward County. And I'm not done. I moved out of Broward County because it's a toxic place, and I refuse to live there around those type of people. And I'm not finished with them. The book is doing really well. I'm going to save lives from parents or even in putting their kids in a better environment. If I could accomplish that, I'm happy. Put the kids in an environment where they don't have to deal with some of these nut job kids or kids that are selling drugs or kids that are robbing iPhones, you know? And you're hurting those kids too by not holding them accountable. So I'm a Republican because those are the things I want.
So, actually, I'm very curious about this executive order to look into these policies.
Yes.
Is there any updates on where that's
Well,
at?
Broward County is so pathetic that they're changing the verbiage of their diversionary programs. They're not calling it a diversionary program. So they'll reword it to any route that they can. But I think we're going to get some legislation done in Florida more to crack down on these type of programs. Because these programs do work if you have someone running it that has good intentions of helping these kids. Like when you bring law enforcement into it,
Okay.
they want to help kids. In Broward, they make law enforcement out to be the enemy, the school board, the superintendent, the employees at the top, the administrators. The police want nothing better to do but to help these kids. They don't want to see them in the system. I deal with the sheriffs in Broward and throughout the state.
Okay.
I sat on a transition team when Ron DeSantis was becoming governor, and I sat with all these guys. And I'm no expert, you know what I mean? I never did this. I know real estate and scrap metal. I listened to what these sheriffs said, and I sat on this big commission, for the transition team. And the sheriffs, the biggest word they said was juvenile. Juvenile, juvenile. It kept going through my head. You got to get these kids when they're juveniles to keep them out of the system later in life.
So help them then.
Yeah, help
Right.
them when they're young,
Yeah.
and then give them a clean record when they're 18. Democrats, okay, I keep using the word Democrats, but that's where, this is where it came from. They have it wrong. Let's help these kids when they're younger, with law enforcement involved. Let's not hurt them, and then we set them up in the right direction. Give them a clean record when they're 18, but teach them right from wrong when they're young, no matter what color they are. I don't care. Doesn't matter to me. I want the kids set up for success in life.
So Andy, you got some very high praise for your book. I saw that, as I was going through it. Dennis Prager said, "This is one of the most important books on American life published in the last few years. If the media ignore this book, it will prove they put ideology above truth." That sounds like
It's
a bit like what
exactly
you've been
what's
talking
happening.
about.
Like I said, CNN canceled on me today. And it's sad because the parents aren't going to get the message. And regardless of party affiliation, you want to put your kids, I would like to think, no matter what, you'd want your kids in a safe environment. And it's kind of sad, but I'm going to do what I have to do to get my message out. And you're going to help me. And I'm getting a lot of attention. And parents are getting it. Not in California, though, where they just passed a bill. It's signed into law, where it's against the law to suspend or expel disruptive kids, and that's in California. It went into law this week.
I believe that you're going to get a lot more bipartisan type support than you might expect. I certainly hope that, because it seems like a lot of the things that you're talking about will resonate to people, across the spectrum.
Getting at that, I really want just the schools safe. I'm not a gun expert. I don't want to debate guns, okay? I said this to many people.
Right.
Why you bring the gun debate into it? When there was a bombing with 9/11 and we fixed all the airports, was there a gun debate? When we put metal detectors in the federal buildings, there was no gun debate. So now why, when kids are getting shot out of school, why do they bring such a gun debate into it? Why can't we just fix what's broken at the school? Why is there a difference? The airports are fixed, federal buildings are fixed, stadiums are fixed. A school where our kids go, our most precious possessions, they got to bring a gun debate into it. Not Republicans. They want to fix the schools. But the left, I don't know why they got a debate over it when we want our kids safe, and that's what it's about.
Well, Andy, I wish you the best of success in getting your message out and getting, the broadest realm of, understanding around what actually happened in Broward County and what happened to Meadow, and how things like this could be prevented.
Yes, it was the most avoidable shooting ever, and it kills me to this day. I don't even like holding the book. It gets me so angry.
I'm so sorry, and thank you so much for taking the time.
Oh, thank you so much.